Look at the fork in your kitchen drawer. Almost every fork you own has exactly 4 tines. Not 3, not 5, not 6, just 4. But have you ever wondered why? Was it just a random design choice? Or is there actually a reason forks around the world settled on this exact number? At first glance, it might seem like a small detail, but the number of prongs on a fork actually changed many times throughout history. And the design we use today is the result of hundreds of years of experimentation. Early forks. The earliest forks used for eating appeared in the Byzantine Empire around the 7th century. These early forks only had 2 tines. They looked more like small carving tools than dining utensils. In fact, forks weren't even meant for eating at first. They were mainly used to hold meat steady while cutting it. People still use knives or their hands to bring food to their mouths. Why people didn't like forks? At first, in medieval Europe, forks were actually controversial. Some people believed using a fork was unnecessary. They thought eating with your hands was more natural. For centuries, forks were seen as a luxury item used mostly by wealthy families. The problem with 2 tines. 2-tine forks worked well for stabbing food. But they had a big problem. Food often slipped off easily. Small items like vegetables or pasta were difficult to hold. This made them inconvenient for everyday meals. So designers started experimenting with different designs. The 3-tine experiment. Eventually, forks with 3 tines began to appear. This helped stabilize food better. But even this design wasn't perfect. 3 prongs still left large gaps, which meant certain foods could slide between them. So manufacturers kept experimenting. The 4-tine solution. By the 18th century, forks with 4 tines became more common. And people quickly realized something important. 4 tines created the perfect balance between gripping food, scooping food, keeping the fork lightweight. It allowed the fork to perform 2 different functions at once. You could stab food or scoop it like a shallow spoon. Structural advantage. 4 tines also make the fork structurally stronger. The prongs distribute pressure evenly when picking up food. If there were fewer tines, the fork would struggle with smaller items. If there were more tines, the fork would become heavier and harder to manufacture. 4 turned out to be the most efficient design. Why not 5 or 6? You might wonder, why not add even more tines? The problem is spacing. When you add too many prongs, the fork becomes less effective at piercing food. It also starts behaving more like a spoon. More tines mean more metal, higher manufacturing cost, less flexibility. So 4 remained the best compromise. Standardization. Once manufacturers realized 4 tines worked best, the design quickly became standardized. Factories could mass-produce forks more easily. Restaurants could buy them in bulk. And eventually, the 4-tine fork became the global standard we know today. Interesting exception. Interestingly, some forks still use different numbers of tines. For example, salad forks often have 3 tines. Carving forks sometimes have 2. Specialty forks may have different shapes, but for everyday dining, the 4-tine fork remains the most versatile. So forks didn't randomly end up with 4 tines. After centuries of experimentation, 4 turned out to be the perfect balance between grip, strength, and practicality. Sometimes everyday objects look simple because their design has already been perfected.